On September 1, 1939, German forces launched a massive invasion of Poland, crossing the border with overwhelming numbers and firepower. This sudden attack ignited the Second World War, plunging Europe into chaos and fear almost overnight. Hitler's goal was to reclaim territory lost after World War I and to expand Germany's influence eastward. He used the alleged mistreatment of ethnic Germans in Poland as a pretext for aggression, rallying his nation behind the invasion. The German army unleashed blitzkrieg, meaning lightning war, a new and terrifying strategy that combined fast-moving tanks, mechanized infantry, and devastating airstrikes to quickly overwhelm and disorient Polish defenses. The Polish army, though courageous and determined, was outmatched and under-equipped. They fought valiantly, but were quickly encircled and forced to retreat as German forces advanced relentlessly. On September 17th, the Soviet Union invaded from the east, striking Poland from behind and sealing the country's fate. The two invading powers had secretly agreed to divide Poland between them. By early October, after weeks of fierce resistance, Warsaw surrendered. Poland was carved up and occupied, its people left to face a harsh new reality under foreign rule. The invasion shocked the world, demonstrating the terrifying effectiveness of Germany's new tactics and the ruthlessness of its ambitions. In response, Britain and France declared war on Germany, marking the true beginning of a global conflict that would engulf nations far beyond Europe. The invasion of Poland set the stage for the devastating campaigns and unimaginable suffering that would follow in the years to come. After Poland, Europe braced for the next German move. In May 1940, Germany bypassed the heavily fortified Maginot Line, sending tanks through the Ardennes forest, where the Allies least expected. The rapid advance cut off Allied armies in Belgium, trapping them at Dunkirk. A massive evacuation saved many soldiers, but France was left exposed. German forces swept south, capturing Paris without resistance on June 14th. France surrendered days later, stunned by the speed and power of the blitzkrieg. In just 6 weeks, Germany had toppled one of Europe's strongest nations. The fall of France left Britain to stand alone against Hitler. The world saw that Germany's military machine was a force unlike any before. The stage was set for the next great battle, Britain's survival. With France defeated, Hitler turned to Britain, aiming to destroy the Royal Air Force before any invasion. The Luftwaffe bombed airfields, radar stations and cities, seeking to break British resistance. Outnumbered RAF pilots, flying Spitfires and Hurricanes, fought fiercely, aided by radar technology. When the Luftwaffe shifted to bombing London in the Blitz, the RAF gained time to recover. On September 15, 1940, the RAF repelled a massive German attack, proving Britain would not fall easily. Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion, was cancelled. The Battle of Britain marked Germany's first major defeat. Hitler's aura of invincibility was shattered. Britain's survival inspired hope across the world. The war's momentum had begun to shift. In June 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in history against the Soviet Union. Over 3 million German troops surged across a vast front, aiming for Leningrad, Moscow, and Ukraine's resources. The Soviets, caught off guard, suffered huge losses as the blitzkrieg advanced rapidly, but the Soviet Union's size and manpower proved formidable. As autumn rains and winter cold set in, German supply lines faltered. Ill-prepared for the harsh conditions, German troops stalled outside Moscow. The Soviets counterattacked, halting the German advance. Barbarossa failed to deliver a quick victory, trapping Germany in a grinding war of attrition. The Eastern Front became a brutal, decisive theatre of the war. Hitler's gamble had backfired, changing the course of the conflict. While war raged in Europe, another fierce conflict was unfolding across the vast, unforgiving deserts of North Africa. Here, the fate of nations would be decided not only by firepower, but by endurance and strategy. North Africa became a crucial battleground. where control of vital supply routes and access to oil resources were at stake. Italy's failed attack on Egypt drew in German forces led by General Rommel, the legendary Desert Fox, whose tactical brilliance would soon become famous. Rommel's Afrika Korps pushed the British back, driving them hundreds of miles eastward across the harsh landscape. But supply shortages, relentless heat and sandstorms made victory elusive for both sides, turning the desert into a formidable enemy. The campaign became a back-and-forth struggle, with each side launching daring offensives and desperate retreats as the front line shifted constantly. Both the Axis and Allies fought fiercely for control of the Suez Canal, a lifeline for British imperial communications and vital shipping. In 1942, Rommel's advance finally stalled at El Alamein, where the exhausted Axis forces dug in for a desperate stand. Here, British General Montgomery rallied his troops and launched a decisive counterattack, turning the tide of the campaign. At the same time, Allied forces landed in Morocco and Algeria during Operation Torch, trapping Axis troops between two powerful armies. By May 1943, the Germans and Italians in North Africa surrendered, marking a major defeat for the Axis powers. The Allies secured the Mediterranean, opening vital sea lanes for future operations and cutting off Axis supply lines. This victory paved the way for the invasion of Italy, bringing the war closer to the heart of Axis territory. The Desert War showcased the importance of logistics, leadership, and mobility as armies learned to adapt to the unique challenges of desert warfare. North Africa was a turning point in World War II, shifting momentum to the Allies and proving that determination and innovation could overcome even the harshest environments. In 1942, Hitler targeted Stalingrad, seeking oil in the Caucasus and a symbolic victory. The city became a brutal battleground, with fighting raging street by street and building by building. Soviet defenders under General Chuikov refused to yield, enduring relentless German assaults. By November, the Germans controlled most of the city, but were exhausted and unprepared for winter. The Soviets launched Operation Uranus, encircling the German Sixth Army. Trapped and starving, the Germans were ordered by Hitler to hold out, but relief never came. In January 1943, the remnants of the Sixth Army surrendered. Stalingrad was a catastrophic defeat for Germany, costing hundreds of thousands of lives. The battle marked the turning point on the Eastern Front. From Stalingrad onward, the Red Army pushed relentlessly westward. After Stalingrad, Germany attempted one last major offensive in the east at Kursk in July 1943. The Soviets, forewarned, built massive defenses, mines, trenches, and anti-tank guns. The Germans, fielding new Tiger and Panther tanks, launched Operation Citadel. Progress was slow and costly. Soviet resistance was fierce. The largest tank battle in history erupted at Prokhorovka, but the Germans failed to break through. With Allied landings in Sicily, Hitler called off the attack. Kursk was another devastating loss for Germany, depleting its best troops and tanks. The Red Army seized the initiative, launching a relentless advance. Germany would never again mount a major offensive in the east. The tide of war had irreversibly turned. By 1944, Germany faced invasion from both east and west. On June 6th, D-Day, Allied forces stormed Normandy's beaches, catching the Germans off guard. German defenses, the Atlantic Wall, failed to stop the landings. Confusion and delayed orders hampered the German response. Allied air superiority crippled German movements and supply lines. After weeks of fierce fighting, the Allies broke through at Operation Cobra, encircling German forces at Falaise. The German army in France was shattered. Paris was liberated in August. D-Day marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany in the West. The Allies advanced rapidly toward Germany's borders. The Third Reich was now fighting for survival on all fronts. By early 1945, Germany was collapsing under the relentless pressure of Allied assaults from both the East and the West. The once mighty Third Reich was now surrounded, its cities battered and its people exhausted by years of war. The Red Army closed in on Berlin from the east, while Western allies crossed the Rhine, pushing deeper into the heart of Germany. The German military was forced to fight on multiple fronts, unable to halt the overwhelming advance. German cities lay in ruins, reduced to rubble by relentless bombing campaigns. Civilians wandered through the devastation, searching for loved ones and shelter, while the army was depleted, desperate, and running out of hope. Despite the hopeless situation, Hitler refused to surrender. He ordered his remaining forces to fight on, clinging to propaganda and dreams of a miraculous turnaround that would never come. The last German offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, was launched in a desperate attempt to turn the tide. It failed, costing Germany its last reserves and leaving the army even more exhausted and vulnerable. In April, Soviet forces stormed Berlin itself. Fierce street fighting erupted as the city was pounded by artillery and set ablaze, signaling the final collapse of Nazi Germany. Hitler, isolated and delusional in his underground bunker, refused to face reality. On April 30th, as Soviet troops closed in, he took his own life, leaving his country in chaos. Berlin surrendered just days later. On May 8th, Germany officially capitulated, bringing an end to the war in Europe and marking the total defeat of the Nazi regime. The Nazi regime was destroyed, its symbols torn down, and Europe's map was redrawn as people across the continent celebrated the long-awaited victory. The devastation left deep scars, cities in ruins, millions displaced, and a nation forced to confront the consequences of its actions. The world would be shaped by these events for decades to come. The war that began with blitzkrieg and dreams of conquest ended in total defeat and ruin for Germany, leaving a legacy that would haunt generations.